Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 1% Healthier podcast. Today, we are joined by Kate Regan. I'm going to read her bio to introduce her to you. Kate Regan is a registered dietitian, group private practice owner, and content creator. She practices with an intuitive eating, health at every size approach to help adolescents and adults ditch dieting and disordered eating for good so they can live a life of food freedom and body acceptance. Kate's team of dietitians supports humans in reconnecting with their bodies through mindful eating for their health without counting calories or restricting their favorite foods, and quieting food noise to make nourishing their bodies simple and stress-free. Ultimately, her goal is to help her clients recognize that they are on the same team as their body rather than fighting against it. So, Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so glad you're here. To give the listeners a little bit of background about who you are, can you share what led you into this work, a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'll start with college because that's really where things changed for me. I started college as a fashion merchandising major. So kind of a complete 180 from
Oh,
I was in art classes and business classes, and I was drawing things and creating things. And then along the way, my first 2 years of college is really when my relationship with food kind of started to take a nosedive. And I started to develop a really unhealthy and restrictive mindset around food, around exercise, around weight. And it started to pretty much consume me to the point where I confused that obsession with a passion. And so I thought that this was my calling. I was like, I love talking about food and I love talking about exercise, so I should be a dietitian because that's clearly what I'm most passionate about. So, halfway through my college career, junior year, I switched my major to start studying nutrition and dietetics, and then completed my degree, went on to do my dietetic internship. And my relationship with food didn't really start to improve until probably the end of my dietetic internship, when I started recognizing, okay, these habits and these beliefs and these behaviors that I'm engaging with around food actually aren't healthy. Right now, I'm learning about the science. Now, I'm learning about practical application and working with real humans. I'm learning about eating disorders. I'm learning about intuitive eating. And my relationship with food is clearly not good. So I really started to embrace the intuitive eating philosophy. I really started to work on my mindset around food, my behaviors around food, and which I think gives me a really, I want to say unique, but I think a lot of dietitians have a very similar story to me, but a unique perspective in working with clients because I've been through that before. So the path I took to get to where I am now was a little bit wobbly, a little bit, twisty and turny, but I'm here now and I absolutely love what I do. I love helping people reclaim not only peace with food, but peace in their lives. I think that's one of the most special parts of my work. So that's kind of my story of how I got to be a dietitian and doing what I'm doing.
that's cool. I can tell you love it. It started as like an obsession and passion, but now it's like a real passion. I can see that and hear that in your voice. So that's cool that you get to help people with that because I truly believe that when you find peace with food and like with your approach to fitness, it brings peace in your life. Like that's something that I've totally felt. And I think that you do a really, really good job at sharing that online through your content. That's something that I noticed, something I've really appreciated is cutting through the noise on what a healthy relationship with food is and what it isn't. And I know that you said in your story, like you noticed yourself not having a healthy relationship with food. What did that actually look like for like people that are like, is my relationship with food healthy or is it unhealthy? I don't know.
So it presents very differently from person to person. Disordered eating behaviors really sit on a very wide spectrum and they can look drastically different from one person to the next. Speaking for my personal experience, I was counting calories, I was following a really restrictive plan for calories. I'm not going to say the actual number because I don't want to trigger anyone, but I was trying to restrict myself to a very unhealthy amount of calories per day. I was stepping on the scale multiple times per day, and I was really letting that number dictate my food choices, dictate my mood, dictate what I wore, how much I exercised. And I was thinking about food constantly, constantly, because I was under eating. So I was malnourished. I was always hungry, and I was always thinking about my next meal. So those were the main symptoms for me when I started to recognize, okay, this is not something I would recommend for someone else as a dietitian now learning what I've learned. So why am I doing this?
Yeah, that's really good. I think that when I noticed that in my own story as well, is like I was weighing myself multiple times a day and letting that dictate my mood, letting that dictate how much I exercise, whether I was doing good in life or failing at life, and letting that completely just control me, and then always thinking about what I was going to be eating next. I thought that that was like a normal thing. You did constantly, if you're eating breakfast, you're thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch and then dinner. And if someone invites you out to a meal, it's like, please let me like think about it in advance so I can like count my calories and everything. So yeah, those are definitely times.
If I was ever invited out to eat, I would be staring at that menu for hours ahead of time, trying to figure out like what's the healthiest thing on this menu, right? The social event became so much less about the socialization and the connection and building relationships, and it became so much more about the food, which is another sign of an unhealthy relationship with food. When you're not able to socialize normally, you're not able to feel present, and food is really taking up a huge space in your brain. I always say a general rule of thumb, because I think this is, as you're saying, like you thought it was normal. I think this way of thinking and interacting with food is normalized, but that doesn't mean that it's normal, right? I think
Mhm.
a lot of people are doing it because up to 75% of women struggle with disordered eating or body image issues. So it's very common, but that doesn't mean that it's normal or healthy, right? So I always give this frame of reference. If you are thinking about food for more than 10 to 15% of the day, probably a sign that you're thinking about it too much.
That's really interesting. That's probably really true. If it's like really consuming your mind, then it's not normal. Or just because it's normalized, that doesn't mean that it's should be normal for you. And I
Absolutely.
think I read like one of your posts actually earlier, thinking about kind of what we wanted to talk about in building a healthy relationship with food. And I know that's some other behaviors that I see so commonly normalized is like fasting to reset your metabolism or pushing out your hunger to be disciplined when really that's just like depriving yourself of energy, or having cheat days, or eating something just to like hit your macros, or letting like a macro count decide whether you get to eat or not. What other things do you notice that are normalized but are not contributing to a healthy relationship with food?
Oh, so many, Megan. I would say skipping meals, especially breakfast, is a super normal behavior that, a lot of people don't feel hungry in the morning. And whether that's because that's just the way their body is or because they started skipping breakfast, so their body has acclimated to that. Who knows what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but that's a super common thing I see, or just skipping meals in general. I see a lot of saving up calories as being normalized, especially if there's an event later or a party later or a meal that you're not cooking for yourself. Saving up calories by eating less before is a really toxic cycle too. And I would say another thing that's super normalized is in the macro space, right? Because I know that that's something you talk about a lot. In the macro space, adding protein powder to everything has become very normalized just to hit this extremely high protein goal, which I think as a society, we're focusing a lot on protein right now, for better or worse. I'm glad that people are getting enough protein. That's wonderful. However, they're getting it in ways that I wouldn't typically recommend for them to achieve a protein goal. So adding protein powder to literally everything is very normalized, especially in the fitness community. But as a dietitian, not something that I would personally recommend as a nutrition
Yeah.
habit.
I've heard so many people in the gym like saying their breakfast was two protein bars and a protein shake. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? Why was that your breakfast? Like, that's, I get it. I understand because that's what we hear is you should eat more protein, protein this, protein that, 30 grams per meal, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's just, the means to the end, I feel like is what's missing, and like the quality there as well, and the quality behind the advice too. Because I think like people will say eat more protein to curb your hunger. I've heard that one, and I'm like, that's not necessarily going to solve the problem of you not getting enough other nutrients that your body also needs and satisfaction. From your perspective, for all the people, because I know there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this and like they understand, they've heard this too. How much protein do we actually need? And what should our, I don't like recommend tracking macros anymore, but when people are thinking about balanced meals and stuff, what should they be thinking about?
That's a great question. Do you want me to give a number or do you want me to give like a ballpark for per meal amount?
Ballpark, whatever you want to give. I think ballpark.
Both? Maybe we just
Yeah.
talk about both.
Yeah. Why
People
not?
can pick and choose what feels best for them. If
Yeah.
you are trying to calculate how much protein you specifically should be eating in a day, a lot of times we hear the goal of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. That's excessive. That is excessive for most people. What I recommend and what the research is showing us is that the optimal amount of protein for the average individual, right? Not an Olympic athlete, not someone who's endurance training or anything like that, but the average amount of protein that is not only adequate but optimal is about 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Mm.
So that's a more realistic number to incorporate in your day and is adequate for, again, the average person. Now, when it comes to breaking that up into meals or snacks, if you just want an easier way to approach your eating choices or your meals, building them in an easier way where you're not trying to meet a specific protein goal per day, what I would recommend is somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. Now, is your body going to fall apart if you have a meal that is not 20 to 30 grams of protein? No, it is okay. And that's part of intuitive eating, where you're not forcing yourself to hit these specific macros in a very rigid way. It's a much more flexible mindset. It's much more realistic and it's much more balanced because you're not hyper focusing on these numbers, right? Can we use these as a frame of reference to check in every now and then and make sure you are getting enough protein or whatever the specific nutrient is that you're focusing on? Sure, no problem with that. But intuitive eating is so much more about having that flexible mindset and being okay if things are not perfect. So that's the ballpark I would recommend. That's going to be, if you want a visual cue, it's going to be about 1 handful-ish of protein on your plate per meal.
Yeah, that's really good advice, having a visual too, like 20, 30 grams, because the flexibility piece, I think, is something that's so important that I'm so grateful for intuitive eating because it used to be if I didn't get enough protein in a meal, I would be so upset, you know? So I am so grateful that I understand if I don't get enough like vegetables in one meal, it's not the end of the world. I can add that to my next meal. And that can be like the flexibility and knowing that you're going to be okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I always say you can trust your body. Your body knows what to do with the food. So you're not going to go into a nutrient deficiency if you have a couple of meals that are not perfectly well rounded, or you go away for a week of vacation and you don't have access to many fruits or vegetables. Your body is resilient. Your body is capable of going with the flow, right?
Totally. And I love telling yourself and reminding yourself often that my body knows what to do. I can trust my body. And I think that in our world, there's so much noise out there that tells you not to trust your body, that tells you when you're hungry, like you shouldn't eat because less is always best. And we were kind of talking earlier about SkinnyTok on how like the advice on TikTok about weight loss and being skinny is put on this pedestal, but it's doing more harm than good because it is detaching us from trusting our bodies. That's what I see because it's telling you like some advice is like you're not a dog, like put down the fork, you know, and like speaking so negatively to yourself, that I just hurts my heart is like why do you think that shaming yourself into change is going to be the way that you make a difference and be healthier? I would love to just like open that up to you. Like what are your thoughts on the SkinnyTok and the advice that they're giving?
SkinnyTok is so extremely harmful and dangerous. At best, it's just weird. The advice they give on there is weird. And at worst, it is extremely toxic and dangerous because there are people, especially women of all ages on this app. There are young ears on this app, right? Young teens who are being exposed to this kind of advice in a very formative stage of their life where they are already susceptible to body image insecurities and anxiety, etc. Being exposed to this kind of advice is really only adding fuel to the fire, and it's teaching them that their worth is their weight and their
Yeah.
worth is their appearance. And that in itself, for the mental aspect, is extremely toxic to have your worth dependent on a number on the scale, the size of your jeans, how you look, how much makeup you wear, etc. But we have the mindset piece. The other side of that is the physical health piece. If people are following this advice, they are 100% without a doubt risking their physical health in the short term and the long term, because they are being taught to eat as little as possible. They are being taught that food should be viewed as numbers and not nourishment, calories and not nutrition. They are focusing on things that are not sustainable, and their body is going to feel it.
Yeah, that is so good. I was writing that down because I wanted to come back to that they're teaching your worth is your weight and your worth is your appearance. And I know that's not true, but when that's so loud, that's what you start to believe. And so if people are just innocently scrolling or looking on how to be healthier and that's the advice that they're given, then that's how they're going to approach health instead, thinking that how they look is everything. I mean, what is a better way to think about health than just shaming yourself into change or like trying to change with such extremes? What are your thoughts on that?
So I actually just posted this quote a couple of days ago, and you actually pointed it out. But I think this perfectly encapsulates the best way to think about health versus weight. Chasing weight is creating a trap. Prioritizing health creates a toolbox. Because when your only focus is weight and weight loss, you really are going to constantly be in this cycle of restricting and then loss of control eating, or it's just going to perpetually be a path of restricting. But if you focus on health, you actually have a whole toolbox full of tools that you can access that are more effective, that are more evidence based, such as nutrition, movement, stress management, sleep hygiene, hydration, strategic supplementation, right? When we're only focusing on a number on the scale, we are stuck in this box of I need to eat as little as possible and I need to exercise as much as possible. And that puts you in harm's way. And it's not a sustainable mindset for either mental health or physical health. But when you're prioritizing health and you have access to all these other tools, all of these other buckets, it becomes less about the number on the scale and more about how you're feeling on a daily basis, what your digestion is like, what your mood is like, what your relationships are like, what your relationship with food is like, right? There's so many other markers that we can use to track health progress.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you start to notice your relationship with food improving, you're going to feel so much better when you rely on those tools in your toolbox than just weight and that one singular metric determining whether, you're doing good or bad or you're healthy or unhealthy just by using that one metric. I mean, like little wins can even be like you make a recipe without thinking that you have to use something else in place of butter or like always healthifying. Or to your point, like I can make brownies without adding protein powder to this, and that's healthy too. It doesn't have to always be like the healthifying. I think that was one of the things I was like, I can choose whether or not to, and like that freedom, I feel like really made me realize, oh, my relationship with food is getting better because I'm not trying so hard to control every little aspect about it.
Yeah,
So,
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's not even so much about the actual decision of whether or not to healthify a recipe or whether or not to add protein powder. It's the intention behind it. Why are you doing that? Are you doing that because it feels safe, because it's a sense of control, it's rigidity, or are you doing that because it's not going to change your enjoyment of it, and it's going to give you a little bit extra nutrition, right? Do you feel morally neutral about that decision? Or is the decision hinging on your self-esteem, right? Is that decision going to impact how you feel about yourself as a person? Because that's where we get into a slippery slope.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to talk more about that, like the moral value of your decisions and if whether or not you have a treat, like that's going to impact your self-esteem. And I do want to talk about body image and health at every size and how this all plays into it. Because when I hear people, like the other day, I was at a dinner with some friends and I just heard her like make the comment about she was asked if she wanted some dessert and she's like, no, I'm trying to be good. And that just like been through what I've gone through. Like I know exactly what the thoughts are in her mind, like around that. So it's not like, oh, I feel bad for you, but like I remember what that felt like to believe that I'm trying to be good based on like the decisions that I'm making. And now I know there's a better way to think about food and not giving it the label of good and bad because then that's reflective of me and like how I view myself. And I would love to hear like how that connects, like your thoughts on how your moral, not your moral, but how you see food as either good or bad, like reflects on your own self-esteem and how we might be able to see ourselves as different than our food choices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Absolutely a byproduct of society and the messaging that we are bombarded with on a daily basis.
Mm.
And it's also a byproduct of diet culture, right? Diet culture is essentially a system of oppression that elevates certain ways of eating and demonizes other ways of eating, right? It kind of worships thinness, it worships clean eating, and demonizes food that isn't as nutrient dense, right? You might hear words like junk food or poison or unhealthy or bad to describe foods that aren't nutrient dense. And the thing is that nutrition exists on a spectrum. Nutrient density exists on a spectrum. Of course, there are foods that are more nutrient dense than others. The difference between an apple and a cookie, right? An apple is going to have more fiber, more vitamins and minerals, and a cookie doesn't have those things. It's not going to have fiber, it's not going to have vitamins and minerals. So those two things are offering nutritionally different things to your body. But that doesn't mean that you need to feel guilty or bad for eating something that doesn't have a ton of nutrition in it. Food is so much more than just calories or a nutrition facts label or macros. Food can be comfort. Food is a vehicle for connection, right? A lot of social events revolve around food, right? Going out to dinner with friends, grabbing brunch with a family member at a party or celebration, there's always food there, right? So it's kind of inescapable, and it's also beautiful, right? Like how cool is it that food can be this connecting piece for relationship building and special memories? It's so much more than just this narrow box that society wants us to view it as, which is just calories in, calories out. We're missing a huge aspect and a huge opportunity to connect with food in a really meaningful way, like we have been for generations and generations. So if you find yourself stuck in that box of thinking about food as good or bad, thinking about food as healthy or unhealthy, and you're really connecting that with your moral value, first I want you to start to understand why you might be doing that. Where did you first hear that connection? Why do you feel like a bad person for eating this food? Is it because of a comment some teacher made when you were 8 years old? Is it because you took a random nutrition class in college and the professor was talking about things that way? Is it a family member, a grandmother, or a father who, their relationship with food wasn't great and kind of passed that down to you? Really important to get curious in a very neutral and compassionate way. Get curious, right, about where these habits and beliefs started forming. And then recognize that you can create your own belief system around food. It doesn't have to be the same as the person who passed it down to you. You're allowed to think about food however you want to think about food. And it doesn't have to be in this really strict and rigid way that is harming your mental health, right? The food you choose to eat says nothing about the type of person you are. That doesn't give me any information about your personality, your hobbies, your passions, what you love to do, your career, who you are. Like it tells me nothing about your own moral compass, right? It's this imaginary thread between the two that we can just snip. It doesn't have to be there anymore.
That's powerful. You really can change that in just a little snip and decide to rewire your beliefs around food and your body too. Like for so long, not only is it like the thoughts that you've been hearing people say about food that makes you feel like good and bad, but also like people's comments about people's bodies. I feel like that's what sticks with me longer. And still something that I'm still trying to work through. And learning about health at every size too was something that I felt a lot of resistance towards because I had so much programming and beliefs in my head that like healthy people are not people that are in bigger bodies. And that was something that was like hard for me to originally get over. And now the more that I actually learn about what that is, the more that I actually learn about what that approach is and like what health really is, I don't know, I've overcome that, but I still am so affected by like, or it takes more work to not be affected, I should say, by like people's comments about other people's bodies, just because I know that's a reflection of their beliefs about food and body. Could you give what is health at every size? And what is that approach?
Health at every size basically just means that you are allowed to pursue health at any size, right? Doesn't mean that you are healthy at every size. No, right? There are people who are in smaller bodies who are unhealthy. There are people who are in larger bodies who are unhealthy. But what health at every size is saying is that your weight does not determine your health. And that's what the science shows us as well. It's not a certain number on the BMI chart that determines a person's health or their habits. It is so much more than that, right? It's how they live their lives, it's genetics, it's their mental health. Some of these things we don't have control over, right? So it's basically just acknowledging that these ancient beliefs that a person needs to look a certain way in order to be healthy is factually incorrect. And I also know that that can be hard to process emotionally if you are in a larger body or if you do have a fear of weight gain and you aren't in a larger body, right? I think those two things are separate. We can acknowledge that the science says this thing, that your health isn't determined by your weight, but oftentimes there's a lot of different reasons why people are desiring weight loss, right? Maybe it's protection from weight stigma. Weight stigma is weight bias in society, right? At a systemic level where people of all body sizes don't have access to the same quality of medical care. They can't access comfortably fit on public transportation the same way that people in smaller body sizes can. They can't walk into any clothing store and find clothes that will fit them automatically. So weight bias is very insidious, right? And that's a big reason why people might want to lose weight. They want to avoid these harms that are perpetuated by weight bias. And also, like we were talking about SkinnyTok, it's glamorous. So if you're not watching the video, it's glamorous, quote unquote, to be skinny right now. It's trendy to be skinny right now. So that's another reason why someone might want to lose weight. They might feel pressure to fit into societal beauty standards, right? So it's not always about health that someone's wanting to lose weight, but there's all of these layers to it that make it really complicated and complex, and therefore make body image work and body acceptance really complicated and complex.
Yeah, it is so complex and it's not an easy quick fix like, oh, I'm gonna think this way and now I'm confident again. But with it being so layered, when people do have that fear of like gaining weight, or if they have that fear of how they're gonna be treated if they look a certain way, what do you recommend, or how do you like help people see things differently so that they don't have that fear anymore?
That's a great question. And I would need like 5 hours to answer it completely, but I will tell you typically what we consider, right, when someone has a fear of weight gain for whatever reason is what they are currently sacrificing in order to maintain their current body size, right? What are the risks of continuing down this road of having so much control over your weight? Are you sacrificing your mental health? Does the way you're interacting with food contribute to anxiety and depression and OCD? Are you sacrificing your relationships? Are you saying no to social plans, or are you bringing your own food to social events because you're so afraid of gaining weight? Are you over exercising and putting your cardiac health at risk? Are you putting your bone health at risk? There's lots of different reasons why, but there's lots of different reasons we could acknowledge that going down the current path that you're on of maintaining such close control over your weight is not going to benefit you long term for your mental or physical health or your quality of life in general, right? Is this actually going to make you happy?
Yeah.
So one of the things I focus on with clients is kind of like, what are the consequences of what you're currently doing, and is that worth it to you, right? This fear of weight gain, is there a little bit of room for us to work on that and kind of expose yourself to that, because you've acknowledged that the way I'm living my life right now is not making me happy. It's not making me healthier. So the things that I'm risking are actually not worth it to me. So yes, let's work on that fear of weight gain. I'm open to doing that. Does that mean it's magically healed and fixed overnight? No. This work takes months or years to come to a place where you feel neutral and accepting of your body, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, yes, that does come with weight gain. But to me, and in my journey, I personally did gain weight in my eating disorder recovery. And to me, while that was the last thing I wanted to do at the time, and I'm sure many of you listening to this can relate, it sounds terrifying to release control of your body and gain weight when you've worked so hard to not do that for a while. But to me, it was so extremely worth it to me because I got my life back. And that's really what I hope to give the gift of to all of my clients, of helping them get their lives back.
Yeah, it's true. You do get your life back. And a big part of that is releasing the control and just surrendering to, again, the belief that your body knows what it needs. Your body, it can be trusted. And rebuilding that trust is going to be one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself so that you can be a happy person in your life. You're not just like surviving, but you're thriving in your life. And I think that that is really important too. I know that one of the things I did want to ask you was when you are like in that place where you don't feel comfortable in your body, where you don't feel confident and you're struggling, even though you know my body's going to change and I'm practicing being okay with that, but you maybe don't like how you look in pictures, or you don't like how you fit in your clothes, or you hate going shopping because seeing yourself, you just don't like that. What are like some small things that people can start to work on, or just even like mindset shifts that can help them be more neutral or like body acceptance instead of really tearing themselves apart all the time?
Yeah, so if you are in a place where you are really overwhelmed by body dissatisfaction or, really deeply rooted body image issues, the first step I would recommend to take is not even necessarily changing the way that you're thinking about your body, but it's a two-pronged approach, right? First, change the way you are speaking to yourself, because even if you don't believe what you're saying, you are actively rewiring your thought patterns, right? And you are teaching your brain a new possibility, a new way of speaking to yourself. So you might not believe it. It might kind of sound woo woo at first, but coming up with some really grounding phrases for you, something like, I am safe in my body, or my body size is the least interesting thing about me, or even if I don't like the way I look right now, I can still take care of myself, right? So that's the first thing I would recommend, is start speaking to yourself. And this is a cliche, you've probably heard this before, but speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you love. The things that we say to ourselves, oftentimes, if we said them out loud and someone else heard them, they would be like, what did you just say? They're
True.
kind of shocking, that we can be very, very mean and harsh and critical to ourselves. So even if you have to get to the place where you're picturing yourself saying that out loud and someone overhearing you and there's shock value there, that's a good sign that you need to change the way you're speaking to yourself, right? So that's the first prong. The second prong is still taking care of yourself in a way that is going to help you to feel better, regardless of what's happening with your weight. Still show up for yourself on a daily basis as an act of respect for yourself, as an act of care, as an act of compassion. Even if you have to think about it this way, right? If I did, wave a magic wand and had my dream body, how would I be treating it differently, right? Would I be eating differently? Would I be moving differently? Would I be saying different things to myself? Would I be more compassionate? Would I be more kind, right? And put yourself in those shoes and start acting like you do have your dream body, which can sound, a little far-fetched also, but it's still going to help you to show up for yourself in a way that's more respectful and careful and considerate than you might be doing right now.
Yeah. Oh, I really like that actually. Like if you were already there, if you already had your quote unquote dream body, how would you be treating yourself then? Because if it's not with kind words, if it's not with respect, if it's not by taking care of it, whether that means getting in movement or taking time to rest, whatever that may be, if you were already doing it, what would that look like today? Yeah, that's a really powerful way of thinking about it. Because I think too, I remember one time like seeing someone like share the idea that if you like you're in the middle of your workout or something and you just like see yourself in the mirror and just start ripping into yourself and saying really mean things like I don't look good, whatever it may be. If that kind of verbiage makes you want to give up and quit, then maybe we should try and like replace those thoughts, like you were saying, with gratitude, speaking kindly, reminding yourself you're more than a body to be looked at. My body is the least interesting thing about me, like you said. I love that one. I honestly tell myself that all the time. Like there's so much more to me and my life and what I bring to the table than just being like a pretty person to be looked at. And I think when you tell yourself that so many times over and over again, you're going to actually really start to believe that. But you really got to believe that and do something about it and act in that way as if you were already that person. So I appreciate that two-prong approach. The other thing, Kate, that you'd shared on your Instagram that I loved, that I have never been able to forget about since I watched you talk about it, was when you pick yourself apart in pictures, is the idea that the way you look is not a shock to other people. I don't know what it was, but that was like so many light bulb moments for me thinking about that. Oh, you're right. Like people see me all the time, and I'm not an image, I'm an experience. Like I'm a living, breathing human. And the only way that I might be shocked by the picture, but other people are not shocked by how I look, they see me all the time. Can you elaborate on that idea?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you remember that. I feel like that was so long ago that I posted about it, but I actually think I do have it in a highlight. Is that where you saw it? In a highlight on
Probably.
my Instagram? Yeah. I think that's like, I have a body image highlight, and I think that's the only video that's in there, which
I
is so
loved it.
funny. But I kind of like forgot to add things to it. But that one really, I remember posting that and people like flooding my DMs being like, holy cow, I've never thought about it this way. But the reason that I wanted to teach on that is because so many of my clients share the same sentiment of looking at like maybe feeling really good, feeling really pretty, loving their outfit at an event or wherever they're taking photos, having a really great time. And then they see a photo of themselves and they're like, oh my God, that's what I looked like. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's important to remind yourself of is that number one, we are not looking at ourselves from that angle hardly ever. And we're really not meant to, especially with the explosion of Zoom and video calls during COVID and beyond. We are constantly looking at ourselves, right? And we're not meant to do that. So oftentimes I'll even tell my clients on our Zoom calls, like, you can shut your self view off, right? Because we're not meant to be looking at ourselves and critiquing and analyzing in this way all the time. So it's just it's an unnatural state to be in the first place. But when you see yourself in that photo and there's a shock, something that's really grounding and that can help you reframe that perspective is that all of these people in my life, all these people in the photo with me, or all these people at the event with me, always see me from these different angles, right? They're not surprised that my body looks this way. It's only me. And the people that I'm surrounded with are still, showing up for me. They still love being with me. They still laugh at my jokes. They still do nice things for me. We still have a great relationship, and they see me this way, right? So my worst fear of if I get to this weight or if I look like this, people won't love me the same or people won't want to be around me. We can just kind of break that myth right in half because that's not true.
I love that. That's so true. Like people will still laugh at your jokes. People will still be kind to you. People will still continue loving you as a person, regardless of how you look. And I think that when you really take that to heart, then you're gonna stop believing that you're just a body or like that in order to be loved, you have to look a certain way. So I love that.
And if the people in your life are making you feel like that, you need to surround yourself with new people.
Hmm. Amen.
Mic drop.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. If your circle is not supporting you or helping you or making you feel loved, or they shame you for how you look, then probably you need a better circle. They're adding to the trap of just like that one weight loss metric. You need a better tools in your toolbox, other better people. So that is for sure. Kate, to kind of wrap up the episode, I wanted to just ask a few like rapid fire questions. What impact do you want to have on the industry of nutrition?
I want food to feel simple again for people.
Mm,
People overcomplicate nutrition and eating patterns so much. And I want food to just feel simple and stress free for them. I want food to just feel like it's part of their life rather than something that is super central and takes up so much space and time and energy. And I want food to just feel fun again, honestly. I want food to feel simple and fun.
I love that. That's so wholesome, simple and fun.
Yeah.
And then aside from food, intuitive eating, and your approach in your work, what do you want to be known for as a person, as Kate Regan?
Someone who is dependable and non judgmental, someone who can be that go to person that anyone can come to and they can expect to be received with warm and open arms and feel safe with whatever's going on for them and just be a really loyal, dependable, compassionate resource for friends, family, strangers.
I love that. Well, I feel like you are a testament of that. Definitely through your content, you can feel that you are dependable, you are loyal, that people can come to you. And like I felt like that. Like I didn't know you prior, and so I really do feel like you're a genuine person and care about the work that you do. So
Thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Very kind. Yeah.
Of course. All right, my last question for you, Kate, is what does 1% healthier mean to you?
1% healthier means to me that you every day are looking at it as a fresh start and you are asking yourself, how can I take care of myself better today? And that can mean anything. It can mean in the way that you are feeding yourself. It can mean the way that you are moving, the way that you are managing stress, the kind of person that you are being. It just means how can I show up better 1% today, little by little.
That is so beautiful. Hey, every day is like a new opportunity to take care of yourself. And day by day, that might change, that might look different. So that is a really good perspective. I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Well, are there any last words that you would like to share, like on the topic of building a healthy relationship, either with food or with your body?
Yeah, I would just leave all of the listeners with one of my favorite quotes, which is I'm not going to get it word for word, but your body is the only home you'll ever have. So be kind and gentle with yourself and treat it that way.
That's true. It is your home, it is your safe place. So you
Yeah,
should take care of it. Thank you
absolutely.
for that quote. That's
Of
awesome.
course. Yeah, but thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I
You're
am so
welcome.
excited for everyone to listen to it, benefit from it.
Yes, of course. Can you share with the listeners where they can connect with you, where they can find you, learn more with you, work with you, anything like that?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned in the beginning, I own a virtual group private practice, a team of registered dietitians, and you can find us at wholesomechicknutrition.com. And that's also my handle on both Instagram and TikTok, Wholesome Chick Nutrition. We have one on one coaching, we have group coaching, we have master classes, we have lots of different resources to support you all.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'll have everything linked in the description box for you guys to go check out her page. I love her page so much. She is so honest. And like every video that you do when you're like talking to camera, I'm like, wow, there's so many golden nuggets. So I hope everybody can just go to your page and just learn for a long time and absorb all the
too.
knowledge that you have. So,
There for the taking.
all right. Well, I hope everyone that's listening had some really good takeaways today. If there's anything that you guys loved on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. You can tell Kate, message her and tell her that what your takeaways were. You can message me as well. You can leave a rating and review, but we hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.